Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez delivers a blistering takedown of ICE, accusing the agency of crossing a line that no American ever expects their own government to cross. She didn't walk into that hearing to score political points. She walked in to deliver a warning so sharp, so undeniable that the room practically froze. Her message was simple: when an enforcement agency starts detaining U.S. citizens because of how they look, how they sound, or what someone assumes about them, the Constitution isn't just cracking, it's bleeding.
Lady
Thank-
elect
Mr.
here
Chairman, I would ask
recognizes Ms.
unanimous consent.
Ocasio-Cortez from New York.
All right, well, that was some kind of bingo going on over there. I don't know what's going on. Anyways.
Oh, I know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you to the witnesses for coming here today. I apologize for the treatment that the four of you have been subjected to. And Governor Walz, I just have to say, I know you're getting a lot of grief from the majority here, but you know, we are talking about individuals who have cheered on an individual who issued a Nazi salute from behind the presidential seal of the United States of America, who have cheered on the pardoning of individuals who attacked the United States Capitol and flew a Nazi flag and the flag of the Confederacy, traitors to the United States, sworn enemies of the United States of America, through the capital of this nation. And now they want to act offended because someone has the courage to say, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, maybe it's a duck. So I want to thank you for not wavering to their bullying, which is unconscionable and sad to see. So I just wanted to let you know that, Governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
To the three of you, Governor Walz, Governor Pritzker, and Governor Hochul, you three have each sworn an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, correct? I'll start with you.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have.
And I imagine that also includes the Fourth and Fifth Amendment protections for due process and the rule of law.
It does.
Sure does.
Yes.
And that means protecting your people in your states, U.S. citizens and every individual, because that is what makes America great, that we are a land of the free and of rule of law, to protect them from infringements of their civil liberties, correct? Now, what we are seeing is a pattern where ICE is breaking the law. We have the detention of a U.S. citizen who has been detained by immigration officials. We have ICE here that has also blamed and arrested U.S. citizens for being simply suspected of being an immigrant, largely because of their appearance. In January, a Chicago-based U.S.-born citizen, Julio Noriega, was arrested by ICE and held in custody for over 10 hours. In April, a Florida Highway Patrol officer pulled over Juan Carlos Lopez Gomez, a United States-born citizen, and arrested him on suspicion of being in the country illegally. He had his real ID, his Social Security card, his mother presented his birth certificate, and they still didn't let him go. In May, U.S. citizen Leonardo Garcia Venegas was filming an ICE raid. He was arrested by ICE. In May, a veteran and U.S. citizen who is Puerto Rican, was detained during an ICE raid at his workplace in New York City. That's called a paper bag test. And your job, Governor Hochul, is to protect people from that kind of infringement, correct?
Yes.
Because all of us must adhere to the law, and no one is above it. So if a U.S. citizen tries to break the law, or if an ICE officer tries to break the law, your job is to uphold the law, correct?
We absolutely uphold the laws of the United States Constitution and the Constitution of the State of New York.
And sanctuary states are about U.S. citizens as well, having sanctuary against the attacks on our constitutional rights from illegal search and seizure. There is nothing preventing ICE from issuing a warrant and you having complete compliance with their request. Correct, Governor Hochul?
We comply in cases where there's been criminal activity alleged. Yes, we always do. But we're not involved in civil immigration enforcement because our state police that I control have to deal with other crimes that they're solving.
And apologies, I just have 10 seconds left. But when they say illegal versus legal immigration, they are trying to end legal status in the United States as well. Correct, Governor Pritzker, with the end of TPS and making people undocumented by removing legal status, ending legal status, and then having the audacity to call them illegal when they were here documented, correct?
Taking students' visas away from people, taking their legal right to be in the United States away from them when they've been granted maybe years earlier to stay.
So I don't want to hear about how this is about illegal versus legal immigration. They are attacking legal status and removing legal status. The Republican majority is anti-legal immigration in the United States. And I want to make that very
And if this trend continues, no American is truly safe from the reach of government overstep. The moment she opened her mouth, the tone changed. She wasn't speaking like a politician giving prepared remarks. She was speaking like someone staring directly at a system that's spiraling out of control. Her voice was calm, controlled, but burning. She began reciting case after case where U.S. citizens, people born here, people carrying valid documents, people going about their day, were suddenly treated as outsiders in their own country. And as she moved through the details, you could almost hear the room shift from routine debate to something much more serious. She talked about a man in Chicago who had every document he needed, Social Security card, driver's license, real ID, yet officers grabbed him anyway and held him for more than 10 hours. 10 hours of detention for a man who had done absolutely nothing wrong except fit into someone's idea of what an immigrant looked like. And it didn't stop there. She reminded the committee that this man wasn't alone, he was one of many. There was the man in Florida, a U.S.-born citizen pulled over during a traffic stop. He handed over his real ID. He provided his Social Security card. His mother even raced to the scene and produced his birth certificate. All of it was ignored. He was still taken into custody on suspicion of being undocumented. Think about how absurd that is. A citizen presents proof of citizenship, yet the officers refuse to believe it because they've already decided who he is in their own minds. And then there was the incident during an ICE raid, where a U.S. citizen who was simply recording the operation, something many Americans do when they see law enforcement in their community, was arrested on the spot. Not because he was doing anything illegal, but because recording made the officers uncomfortable. They dismissed his real ID as fake before verifying it hours later. Imagine being tackled and handcuffed, not for breaking the law, but for holding up your phone. She pushed even deeper. She talked about the Puerto Rican U.S. citizen, a veteran no less, who was detained at his job during a workplace operation. A veteran, someone who had served this country, treated as a suspect because someone decided he looked foreign. And in that moment her message hit harder: if a veteran with federal documentation can be detained, anyone can. These examples weren't abstract stories from a distant era, they were recent. Documented. Verified. And the most chilling part, none of them were mistakes made in isolation, because the same pattern played out across multiple states, multiple operations, and multiple communities. She described it as a widening crack in the foundation of American civil liberties. She leaned into the constitutional implications next, and when she did, the entire room went quiet. The Fourth Amendment isn't optional. It protects every person on U.S. soil, not just citizens, from unreasonable searches and seizures. And the Fifth Amendment requires due process before taking away someone's liberty. She reminded the hearing that these protections apply to everyone, not only the people that officers feel comfortable with. But then she made a point that shook the conversation even more. This wasn't solely about enforcement gone wrong. It was about a deeper assault on legal status itself. She argued that some politicians used the language of illegal versus legal immigration as a smokescreen. Behind that language, she said, were efforts to end the very programs that make people legal in the first place. Temporary protected status, student visas, humanitarian authorizations, policies that when revoked, instantly turn documented people into undocumented people overnight. And then after stripping their status, critics point to them and say, "See, they broke the law." She said it was a manufactured cycle, a deliberate one. And she didn't mince words. The way she phrased it, the strategy wasn't to stop unauthorized immigration, the strategy was to reduce the pool of authorized immigrants by tearing down the systems that grant legal presence in the first place. That line landed hard. You could feel the tension in the room shift. Some members bristled, others leaned in. But nobody could ignore the sheer boldness of what she was saying. Then she turned to the governors sitting before her, state leaders who had been dealing with these enforcement issues firsthand. She asked them one by one whether they had sworn an oath to defend the Constitution. Each of them said yes. She reminded them that this oath includes defending due process, civil liberties, and the rights of every individual in their state. Not just citizens, not just immigrants, but everyone. She pressed harder. She asked whether they believed they had the duty to protect people from unlawful detentions even when the detaining officers came from a federal agency, and again, they agreed. She pushed them to clarify that their states complied with criminal warrants and legitimate investigations, but that they refused to participate in civil detentions that bypassed constitutional protections. Their answers were unambiguous. They stood by constitutional law, period. And then, almost abruptly, she pivoted to something more explosive. She pointed out how some politicians complained about being criticized while openly cheering on individuals who had used extremist imagery, or who had attacked democratic institutions, or who had openly embraced anti-American symbolism. She made the comparison intentionally, drawing a sharp line between those who claim to defend law and order and those who actually stand by the rule of law, even when it's inconvenient. The way she wove these elements together, wrongful detentions, racial profiling, attacks on legal immigration, constitutional violations, political hypocrisy, wasn't accidental. She was building a case not just against ICE's actions, but against a larger culture of enforcement without accountability. She warned that once an agency starts ignoring identification documents, it creates a chilling precedent. Any officer anywhere can choose not to believe you. And when that happens, the rights that citizens assume they have become meaningless. A passport doesn't protect you. A birth certificate doesn't protect you. A social security card doesn't protect you. What protects you, she said, is adherence to the rule of law, and that adherence was being fractured. Her delivery carried urgency, the kind that keeps people glued to a video waiting for the next detail. She talked about the psychological impact on communities who watched their own neighbors get detained even when they were citizens. The fear that rippled through workplaces, schools, and neighborhoods wasn't limited to undocumented people. It affected citizens, legal residents, and even long-term community members who had never had any issue with law enforcement. She mentioned that civil rights groups had documented dozens, possibly hundreds, of these wrongful detentions nationwide, and that the real number might be higher because many people never file formal complaints. She expressed concern that an agency with the power to detain without verifying identities properly becomes an agency that can undermine democratic norms. And then she landed the biggest point of all, the point that made the clip explode across social media. She told America that what they were watching wasn't a standard hearing, it was a warning. This wasn't about partisan lines or ideological divides. This was about the very real possibility that if these practices continue unchecked, every American is vulnerable to the same treatment. Her exact message boiled down to this: if you normalize detaining citizens because they look like an immigrant, then nobody is safe. You could be next. Your family could be next. Anyone could be swept up by an officer acting on bias or assumption rather than probable cause. And she didn't say it as speculation, she said it backed by the very real cases that have already happened. She closed with something rare in congressional hearings: moral clarity. She said that constitutional rights do not belong to one political party. They don't belong only to people born in certain zip codes or with certain complexions, they belong to everyone. And she challenged America to pay attention before it's too late, because the erosion of liberty doesn't always arrive with a dramatic crash. Sometimes it arrives quietly, one unconstitutional detention at a time. As she finished, it didn't feel like a speech. It felt like a call to action, a call for Americans to understand that constitutional rights must be defended rigorously, constantly, and without compromise. Because once those rights weaken, the system doesn't wait for you to notice. It keeps going. If you're still watching, and you understand how critical this moment is, make sure you hit subscribe, tap the like button, and share this video with someone who thinks this issue doesn't affect them. Because rights don't disappear all at once. They slip away slowly, until one day you realize you needed them more than you ever imagined.